Alright guys, here's a quick tutorial we're going to do on how to change out your thermostat. So what you're going to do is you're going to need a new thermostat, and you're going to want a new gasket like this. And you can get these both on rockauto.com for really cheap. It's great. And depending on how your thermostat housing is doing, you might need a new one. I got this from AutoZone, but they have one on Rock Auto as well. Same brand, I think. And one thing you need to know, guys, is this thermostat is not the same as the original thermostat that comes on the car. So if you have one of these already, you're fine. But if you don't, you may notice, sorry, let me focus there. The old thermostat had like kind of ridges like this that came up on this side of the housing. And that means the bolts that you had were this long. About, I don't know, I'd say 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Now, that's not a problem for these front ones because they just go all the way through the back. But the back one, you have to cut it short like this because it kind of hits back there. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't have room to go. It's got a pipe right there. And so you have to cut this short so that it doesn't go all the way through. And I put washers on this one because I didn't want to cut more of the threads off. Alright, there we go. So that's going to be one thing you guys want to do. And one trick for when you're cutting these, oops, sorry, there we go. So one trick for when you're cutting these is you want to put a nut on before and move it all the way down to the end. And then you're going to cut it to the length you want and then undo the nut. And what that nut is going to do is it's going to clean up your threads. And that's going to make it a lot easier for you when you go to put it back in. It'll make sure all your threads are nice and perfect so that it'll thread nice back on there. If you don't do that, then you can run into problems with the threads on here not syncing up correctly on there because you cut it. And you could run the risk of cross-threading, which is no bueno. Alright, so since I'm in the midst of doing this right here, I kind of have some of my stuff off, but I'll show you kind of what you need to do in order to get this off the first time. So what you've got, just a second, you've got this thermostat on and this piece of pipe, this radiator hose. And that goes down to this radiator pipe right here, coolant bypass or something like that. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to undo your clamps. And for me, it's easier to kind of take that piece off first because it's so big. And then you're still going to want to take this off as well. Now, the reason you want to do that is because when this thermostat housing is on, it's really hard to get to that back one for some reason. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take that piece of pipe off. So we can go ahead and get this off. We're going to get our extension and stick it back behind here in order to get to it. Now one thing that you might have to do if you don't have this timing cover off is what you're going to need to do is get a universal joint extension. And I don't have one here with me since I have the timing cover off, so it's going to be a straight shot for me. But it's kind of like a sort of elbow that you can use on a ratchet. And basically that's just going to let you be able to get back behind there and get a perfect head-on kind of attack on that bolt. Because we definitely want to be careful with it and don't want to break it at all. Alright, so once you get all that off, we're going to go ahead and clean up the mating surfaces. I've gone ahead and got a wire brush and this scraper thing right here. Now, as always with mating surfaces, you want to be very careful not to leave deep grooves and scratches in them. This is especially important for the differential and when you're cleaning up the transmission pan. And that's because those are very small molecules and they can get out of scratches really easily. Now, if you don't know very much about coolant, coolant is 50-50 coolant to just distilled water. At least that's what it should be. So it's really kind of about the same size as water molecules, so it's not too bad, but you definitely don't want to take this wire brush and go ahead and scrape massive grooves in anything, or likewise use the edge of this to get anything off. So, as you can see, I've kind of done this one a little bit, and it still has just some marks on it because I used it before, and the coolant kind of just ate it away a little bit. It used to all look like that shiny purple kind of, and now it's just kind of dull on the inside. And that's just the coolant on the inside. I don't know why it does it. But once we clean both of those surfaces off, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our new gasket and we're going to go ahead and stick it on there. And I'm going to use just a tiny little bit, a couple dabs of gasket sealer, just to stick it to it so it'll be easier for me to align the holes so I don't have to hold 3 things at once. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab our new thermostat. Let's open this boy up, see what it looks like. And boom, here we go. this is our new thermostat right here. So what you're going to want to do with this new thermostat is you may notice this little gold dot at the top there. Right there. So that little gold dot is called the air bleeder. And it's just kind of a little thing that goes from the back to the front. And what we're going to do when we stick this in here, we're going to go ahead and position it so it's upright. And it's kind of hard to see in here, but we're going to make sure that it's at the highest point it can be. And that's because air rises to the top of the coolant, and that's going to be where we want to bleed our air out of there, or else we'll leave some air bubbles in here, and that's not as good. It can make it overheat, or it'll just, mess it up a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and stick that in there. Now the first time I did this, mine didn't stick like that. So if yours sticks, that's great. Mine didn't. If it doesn't stick, one thing I could recommend is taking it and then taking your housing and kind of knowing which way your housing goes. And housings have up arrows. I believe this one is this little tab right here on this. You can see that. I believe that's the up arrow. And you're going to stick this, take it and align it, and put it in like that. And then just kind of hold it as you go up into here and stick like that. And there we go. That's pretty much good. And you want to be careful to make sure it sits flush, because again, we don't want any leakage. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick a few dabs of gasket sealer on that and stick it on there. And then we're going to go ahead and take the thermostat, stick it in, and we're going to bolt all of those up. Alright, so we've got our thermostat housing on with our thermostat inside and our gasket in between. It's all looking good. Now the only thing left to do is reattach this hose. Remember, there's a bolt down there. Then we've got our small piece of hose between the two. And then we're going to clamp those down, and that will be it for replacing your thermostat.